Good evening. It's great to have you with us here on this 2024 election night, what promises to be a historic night one way or another. I'm Dave Zawilinski. I'll be your host from our WOWT 6 newsroom here from Midtown Crossing. I will be joined by a slew of reporters and team members here. We'll introduce them to you in just a few seconds. Our goal tonight to be on with you until all of the local races have been decided and we hear from the victors as well as the concession speeches. With that, I want to welcome in 6 News veteran reporter Brian Mastre. He has been with us every year since we've been doing this live streaming event. He will be at our touchscreen doing his best Steve Kornacki impression, minus the khakis, of course, live from our studio. He will have all the results when they begin to come in here momentarily at the top of the hour. We also have a team of reporters, like I mentioned. Let's introduce them to you now. We have 6 News political analyst Ryan Horn joining us live from Washington tonight. He'll give you great analysis, breakdown, not just local results, but as well as national results. You see our trio of reporters. Taylor Johnson is down in Bellevue this evening with the Republican delegation with all of those candidates tonight. We'll check in with her just a minute and a live interview with Don Bacon just minutes away. Bella Caracta is across the street from us at the Cottonwood Hotel at the headquarters for Tony Vargas tonight. That is Don Bacon's challenger. That promises to be a close race. We'll see when that gets decided, if it gets decided tonight. And we also have 6 News anchor Jacqueline Fernandez. She is live in La Vista with Dan Osborne, who is challenging Senator Deb Fischer this evening. We'll get to all of them here over the course of the next couple of hours, but I want to begin this evening with 6 News political analyst Ryan Horn, who joins me live from Washington, D.C. All right, Ryan, I should say. The results started coming in just a couple of hours ago. 2 hours to be exact. Some states have already been called. 26 polls are currently closed, plus Washington, D.C. I want to hear your initial thoughts and what you're looking forward to as this unwinds here this evening.
Yeah, looking at some of the early results, one of the things I was looking at is what happens in the suburbs. That's been the big story of the last 8 years is suburbs turned away from Republicans and towards Democrats. Does that trend stay the same? Does Kamala Harris do as well as Joe Biden did in the suburbs? Does it get worse, or do they come back a little Republicans? Flip side, there's Donald Trump, who racked up huge gains in small towns and rural areas over the course of that same 8-year stretch. Does his margin maintain and stay as high? What happens to turnout in both of those areas? Local right now, early from the results in the Southeast, it looks like maybe both of those things are true, and we could have really close races in either North Carolina or Georgia.
All right, and what are you seeing from the early results at this hour, Ryan?
Kamala Harris is doing well where she would need to be, close to Joe Biden's number in those big suburban areas around Atlanta and Charlotte. But what we also see is that Donald Trump is doing as well as he did in 2020, and maybe in a few places better in the mid-sized cities and smaller towns. A lot of counting to be done, but it looks like that split between rural and urban suburban looks very similar to 2020 so far.
All right, there's so much to get to. The Nebraska polls closing here in just minutes. Iowa as well. Ryan will give you a short break, let you continue your analysis, and we'll get back to you in a few minutes or so when those results come in. Thanks for joining us and kicking off our night here on our WOWT live stream. All right, we'll get back to Ryan shortly, as I said. Now, though, we want to go live to 6 News' Taylor Johnson, who has Don Bacon standing by here on this election eve, or on this night of the election, I should say. Let's go live out to Taylor Johnson and get a live interview with Don Bacon. She can't hear me.
I was going to say we're close to the cutoff time here. How are you feeling?
I feel like we have the slight advantage. We were behind, I think, up until September. Then we had the debates. And I think my opponent sounds really good for 5 minutes, but when he has to say the same thing 20 times, and he doesn't have any depth to it. And then there was fact checks by TVs on some of his main accusations, and they said Don's telling the truth. I feel like this last month really did me a lot of good. We gained 7 or 8 points. It's too close for comfort, so the voters get to say. But right now, we're looking at the early balloting. We feel better than what we did than in 2020, or 2022, excuse me.
And so I know you guys have been pushing up until this final minute, going out, talking to voters, things of that nature. What have you been getting from those that you've been able to speak with?
Well, I've been hearing a lot of split ballot voters say, Don, we're going to vote for you. I mean, here's what I hear from Democrats a lot. You get things done, right? And you're an American first. And that's how I see myself. I want to be an American over a partisan guy. And we got to work together to solve a debt crisis. We got a world on fire. We got a border crisis. And Republicans can't solve this by themselves because James Madison designed a system to prevent that. Democrats can't do it either. It takes consensus building to make that happen. And I've been proven to do that pretty well.
Well, like we said, the votes are getting ready to come in soon. The next time we'll see you is after the results are in.
Yeah,
so
when I feel like when I'm pretty confident, I'll come back out.
All right, that sounds good. So thank you so much for your time, Congressman Bacon. Great to see you. All right, so once again, we are here with several Republican candidates tonight as we wait for the results to come in, including Congressman Bacon. We'll check back in with you soon. Send it back to you, Dave.
All right, Taylor, thank you very much. We will check back in with you throughout the evening. With that, I want to welcome in Brian Mastre, live in our studio at the touchscreen as promised. All right, Brian, as we just talked with our political analyst, Ryan Horn, results have started to pour in. I know you're going to break things down throughout the night. We're minutes away from Nebraska polls and Iowa polls closing when we promise to get the first set of ballot drops here from Douglas County. What are your initial thoughts as we kick off our coverage here this evening?
I think that'll be one of those that's really interesting, Dave, is that in Douglas County, so we're 2 minutes away from getting those results. These are all the early votes, everything that besides what came in today in the drop box. Election Commissioner thinks there's about 123,000, maybe some more, that will be counted. That's going to be pivotal. That's half of what the total vote will be for the entire election in Douglas County. So we're going to clearly want to be able to dive deep inside what those numbers are when you start looking at Douglas County, and then when you're starting to able to break it out. How does that impact the Vargas race, the Don Bacon race, who we just heard from? Half the votes early, so who is that going to benefit? The early numbers more than likely will be because it's in Douglas County where registrations for parties is more split. There's about 100,000 independents that could make or break it. I'm assuming Tony Vargas will have a lead when those initial numbers come out because of the registration. But then you're going to start counting in Saunders County, which is strongly Republican, and then parts of Sarpy County that go into Congressional District 2 as well. And that's very red. That kind of covers the Gretna area and that part of it. And so you kind of see where we break it down the county. So here you have Douglas County. This is the part that's Sarpy County. It does not include Bellevue or Offutt Air Force Base. It's got Springfield and Gretna. And then you have all of Saunders County, which is very rural. You have Wahoo as the county seat. And so if those numbers come in fairly quickly too for the early votes, we should have a really good idea in terms of the Bacon-Vargas race. And on top of that, because of winner take all, Nebraska does not do that. This is also the same footprint for whether there is a blue dot. It's been Nebraska's a red state. Trump is going to win Nebraska. No one's arguing that. But it's a possibility that Harris could win CD2.
All right, and Brian, let's go down to our electoral map, the main one, where we will be watching the nation, and explain to our viewers this great interactive tool. It's new to us this year. It's the first time we've had it for a presidential election. Break down what our viewers can expect here over the next coming hours with this.
Right, so this is the electoral map. You've seen, this is Steve Kornacki hand-me-down, we'll call it. But this is the breakdown where you can see we can control the different colors and who gets what, and you see here Nebraska has 5 electoral votes, but it can be split. You've got Iowa with 6 electoral votes. The winner of that state gets all 6 of them. Iowa does not split. What's going to be interesting to watch in Iowa is that they have the 6-week abortion ban. An Iowa poll came out just days ago that actually had Harris with a 3-point lead. Trump won that big time last time around. So we're able to kind of go into each of the different places, and we can actually do our own forecasting as well, Dave. So if we see something that we want to keep an eye out, we can go through that and figure it all out. Right now, as you can tell, the map has Trump with 95, Harris with 27, 270 electoral votes are needed to become president.
270 is indeed the magic number. It is going to be quite some time, I think, until we get to that. That is 6 News' Brian Mastre. Brian, we'll let you take a quick break here as it just crossed the 8 o'clock hour and start digging in some of those results that we get here any minute. All right, Brian, thank you very much. Here we go. Back here in the 6 News newsroom right now. I understand Bella Caracta is standing by. I want to get out live to Bella. She is at the Tony Vargas campaign headquarters tonight, which is at the Cottonwood Hotel. Bella joins me live just across the street from us here at our WOWT 6 News studios. Bella, I want to toss it out to you, and I understand you talked to a few people from the campaign. What did they have to say?
Yeah, Dave, I'm here at the Cottonwood where Tony Vargas has his watch party. And, sorry, one second, I can hear myself. There we go. I'm here at the Cotton where Tony Vargas has his watch party. And, you know, I think people are starting to trickle in slowly because if you remember, the results came in after midnight. So I think people kind of know that this is going to be a very close race throughout the night. And if you remember, the results came in at around 1:30 and Don Bacon, Republican incumbent, won by 6,000 votes. Brian Mastre talked about the breakdown between the counties, and as we're going to be getting in those results soon, we'll have an early picture, a very, very early picture about what that's going to look like. And when I spoke to Tony Vargas's manager, she mentioned about the campaign finances and how this race has brought in double the amount of contributions compared to 2022, and she
what a strong campaign we've built, and that people are really engaged in this election cycle. You know, not only is fundraising record-breaking for the state of Nebraska, we've outraised Congressman Bacon almost every quarter of this campaign since Senator Vargas announced in July of 2023, and our fundraising from in-state Nebraskans far exceeds his, which I think shows what kind of support he has in the state.
So she pointed to the campaign finances. She also pointed to the door knocking and a lot of the grassroots efforts that they've done here in the state of Nebraska. Again, results are coming in very shortly. They probably have already those early voting numbers. So we'll be sure to keep you updated here at the Tony Vargas Watch Party as we get more reaction. Dave, back to you.
All right, Bella, thank you very much. We will continue to check in with you throughout the evening. I'm Dave Zawilinski, back with you here in our 6 News newsroom, just crossing the 8 o'clock hour. This is where we expect to get our first results from Nebraska polls here and Iowa as well. So let's give you a timeline of what we expect to happen here tonight. Bring this in for you right now. Also closing at the top of the hour, there are a slew of polls. 26 polls were closed as we came on the air, plus Washington, D.C. Polls that close at 8 o'clock tonight. Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, the battleground states of Michigan and Minnesota, of course us in Nebraska, New Mexico, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Wisconsin, and Utah. So a whole slew of results coming in from across the country here at the top of the hour. We should have some numbers momentarily. When we do, we will get right back to Brian Mastre at the touchscreen to get his analysis. He's getting ready there. I also want to show you that we are expecting from the state of Nebraska tonight. Pardon my mistake there. At 8 p.m., these first votes that we get in will be from everybody who voted early prior to yesterday afternoon. We will get another dump of results at 8:45 this evening. That's everybody who voted in person today before 2 o'clock. Then an hour later at 9:45, we will get all of the votes cast in person today across the polls after 2 p.m. Updates will happen then every hour from there on out until we get the results. I want to get over to Brian Mastre, who is live at our touchscreen. It looks like Brian has a few results in. All right, Brian, the first poll results are in from Nebraska. What are you seeing?
All right, as we said, the Democrats are benefiting greatly from these early votes. Remember, there's probably 123,000 or so that came from Douglas County alone. Let's go to CD2 right off the bat. You have, I'll hit the numbers here. So you have Vargas with 56% of the vote right now. He's leading Bacon, who has 43%. So that's 131,000 votes. That is probably mostly Douglas County, and then maybe some from Sarpy and Saunders. But if I was told there's around 123,000 and we have 131,000 that are in, most of these are probably from Douglas County. The other one that a lot of people were watching, right? Deb Fischer, who's been in office for 12 years, a Republican in a Republican state being taken on by an independent union machinist, working class guy. The early numbers here are big. You've got 59% Dan Osborne leading Fischer by 18 points. This is with 237,000 votes in. So remember, this is a statewide race. And we can look here at the heat map. So this gives you an idea of where some of the numbers are coming in. It kind of gives you a sense of like if an area is doing much better than normal. So you've got North Platte, Grand Island, mostly red. But then you have Omaha, Sarpy, or Douglas Sarpy, as well as Lancaster County that are turning in big numbers in the Osborne race. What about the blue dot that people talk about? Nebraska isn't a winner take all. So let's see what that looks like for the president race. Nope, I didn't do that right. So in Nebraska alone, this is why it's a bit of a misnomer, Dave, when you see the early numbers. Harris is leading, by 16 points, but Donald Trump is already being declared the winner in Nebraska because they know that there are there are about 300,000 more registered Republicans in the state than there are Democrats. But it's one of the reasons why some people are wondering what kind of impact did Dan Osborne have by being an independent. There are a lot of independents in Nebraska. So was he able to pick off Republicans and then also get most of the independents? If he's able to do that, that is a good sign for him. But the more that the rural votes start to come in, the lead will be chipped away by Deb Fischer. Let's take a look at a couple of the initiatives.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we've heard all about, let me get this back up here. So Initiative 434, Initiative 439, those are the two abortion petitions. 434, I like to keep track this way. 434 is about restrictions. 439 is abortion rights. So the early vote right now has the 12-week abortion ban, cementing that into the state constitution, being rejected. How about more abortion? This is abortion rights, giving more choice to women to control their bodies. That is a huge lead right now, 63% to 36%. Again, though, this is probably more Democrats voting because of the early votes that we're seeing. How will that change, Dave, when more of rural Nebraska starts chiming in on this? Let's take a look at the two medical marijuana. Remember, that was thrown into question because the courts are looking at the signatures. Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana say it's just a big diversion to try to get people to not vote for it when they know they have the support. So let's say if they do have support. Remember, it's two petitions. One would legalize medical marijuana, and that right now is at 76% to 23% with 120,000 votes. The second part of that, remember, because they got in trouble before because the Supreme Court said, oh, it's too complicated, you have to break things into two parts. So they did this time. And the second part, this one is to legalize it, this one is to regulate so that you could actually have a commission figure out how all of that stuff would work. That has huge numbers too. Let me look at both of these together, because some people thought, what if they don't understand that the two are doing sort of the same thing? Would one get a no and the other get a yes? So 177,000 saying yes on to legalize medical marijuana, so 177,000. 168,000 saying yes, that there should be a cannabis commission essentially regulating medical marijuana. So Dave, that looks like what some of the early polling numbers were when surveys went out several years ago. We have two other initiatives too. This is that it would repeal the public dollars for private education, the scholarships, the vouchers. Right now, the repeal is losing big, 62 to 37%. And then you have the paid sick leave. Well, this is numbers similar to the medical marijuana. 77% to 22% saying, yes, paid sick leave should be required. The other Senate race that we have, Pete Ricketts versus Preston Love. Preston Love with a big lead, but again, that's an example of those early votes that are coming in. Pete Ricketts already declared the winner, and that's really because it's hard to compete when there are 300,000 more registered Republicans in the state than Democrats. Dave, back to you.
Yeah, all right, Brian, we'll let you continue to dive into those results, both the initiatives and the head-to-head battles as those results continue to pour in. The next drop is at 8:45, where we will obviously learn a lot more. With that, I want to welcome in 6 News' Jacqueline Fernandez, who is live this evening for us at the Dan Osborne headquarters. He is in La Vista. Osborne, of course, the challenger to Senator incumbent Deb Fischer. Republican versus Democrat, heads up there. This is one of the seats across the nation that Democrats, Jacqueline, are hopeful that they can flip. There's only about 3 of them on a night where so many Senate Democrats have a chance of losing their seats. So if they're going to gain any ground, this could potentially be one of them. I know you're there at the La Vista Hotel where Dan Osborne is this evening, and you've talked to some people from his campaign. How are they feeling right now at this hour as the early results come in?
Yeah, Dave, I mean, as you mentioned, the results are coming in. It's about 8:12 now on my cell phone, at least that's what it says. I'm getting a little feedback here, so bear with me as I try to explain to you what's happening here at the Osborne watch party. So, you know, the scene is, a lot of people are kind of coming in, they're filtering in as we talk. You know, the exciting stuff here tonight, there's pizza, there's a dog in the audience, so people are kind of getting revved up to support Osborne. Now, of course, you know, the polls, perhaps surprisingly, were saying that, you know, this was going to be, you know, a close race, and this was something that initially was not really forecast. As you know, Republican Deb Fischer running for this seat again. If I'm not mistaken, she's been in this position for 12 years now, and a lot of independents saying that, you know, the time for a change is really right now. So they're hoping that Osborne, with some of his popular platforms with the independent and, as you mentioned, some Democratic parties, will really start to take root with voters. You know, of course, the turnout is really everything. But some of those platforms is cutting middle class and small business tax breaks. So that's really something Osborne, as a working class man himself, living here in Omaha with his wife and children, is all for. Another situation, securing the border. And this was, you know, plus or minus for the Democrats and Republicans, independents, of course, standing on their own 2 feet on this one. But the idea is that securing the border and, you know, rooting really for legal immigration. So Osborne's platform is that, you know, we do want immigrants to come into the United States. We want them to come in legally, and ultimately this will help, you know, the Nebraska economy and the U.S. economy as well. And then the third platform, you know, Social Security for every American. So just kind of taking a look at my notes here, but, you know, I mean, the working man, right? So Osborne really wants you to know that, you know, he's got your back, right? So you worked hard all these years. You want to know that you have something coming back, and Social Security is really a big one. He says he's not going to mess with that, and, you know, he's going to, with this way, keep the government, you know, out of your pocketbook, Dave. Audio.
All right, that is Jacqueline Fernandez reporting for us live this evening. A slow start there at not only the Dan Osborne headquarters, but many of the watch parties throughout the evening. In the early hours, things continue to ramp up as we build toward a finality in this months-long race. 18 months plus campaigns going on, billions of dollars being spent, it all at stake here tonight. I want to show you what's going on live down in Bellevue at this hour. We won't listen in live, but this is Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen, currently at the Republican delegation there in Bellevue tonight. We heard from Taylor Johnson earlier in a live interview with Don Bacon. We understand the majority of the Republican delegation is there tonight. They're getting to an early start to their supporters there in attendance this evening, getting them ramped up for what promises to be a joyous night for many of the Republicans across the state of Nebraska. President Donald Trump has already been obviously declared a victor here this evening. Let's take you over to our election map here in the state of Nebraska, that is, as we go go over to the election map now. These are the states that have been officially called. The upper Midwest and the South so far, Donald Trump with a 141 to 27 electoral college vote lead. That just jumped to 150. And again, NBC News, I believe, is calling Nebraska already for Donald Trump. No big surprise there. No surprises anywhere. As we show you our electoral map here, I want to draw your attention to the states that are currently highlighted in a border of yellow. We call those the key states. Those are the battleground states. As I move that graphic off the screen for you there. So we're talking about the 7 battleground states. You have the blue wall up to the north, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Then you have the 3 southern states, North Carolina, Georgia. Sorry, 2 southern states, North Carolina and Georgia, and then the 2 southwestern states, Nevada and Arizona. Those are the key 7 states. No surprises yet. It's too close to call in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Those polls closed at the top of the hour, so we're still waiting for those results to come in. It promises to be a long night with some of those key battleground states, the ones where it won't be a long night, the ones where it's already been called. Indiana and Kentucky, the first to be called this evening in favor of former President Donald Trump, and then New England, Vermont, and Massachusetts were shortly called thereafter for Kamala Harris. So she still needs 243 votes. Donald Trump needs 120, but it's all going to come down to those battleground states. And will it be North Carolina, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania? Which one of those will be the first to call? It was 4 years ago, as I bring you over back to 2020 to show you how that map looked. It wasn't until Saturday where Pennsylvania and those key 20 electoral votes were finalized in favor of Joe Biden. So this could take some days. We're told Pennsylvania has sped up their process for counting early mail-in ballots. It should take about 50% less of the time. It may be late tomorrow, Wednesday, or early Thursday before those votes are finalized. We certainly hope to have a key indication of which way the Keystone State might be leaning by the time we sign off the air tonight, hopefully. Maybe that is a hope. Who knows at this time. Again, we're proud to be with you here on election night. Dave Zawilinski live from our 6 News, WOWT newsroom here at 36th and Farnham. We have Brian Mastre live in our studio. 6 News political analyst Ryan Horn live from Washington, D.C. this evening. We're going to check back with him in a few minutes here to get his initial thoughts of the Electoral College and the way it's currently playing out. We talked to him earlier today on First at 3, Brian and I did, to get his early leans. He said, you know, Indiana is one of those first states to have the polls close at 6 o'clock Central Time. He was really interested in the suburbs of Indianapolis, Hamilton County up to the north side. Which way was that leaning? Would Kamala Harris outperform what Joe Biden did, say, 4 years ago? And would that maybe be a slight lean, an indication to the way the rest of the nation would play out over the course of this evening? Ryan provides great analysis, been with us, analysis, I should say. He's been with us for the last few election nights in primaries and has done a great job. And we also have our trio of reporters, Taylor Johnson with the Republican congressional delegation here in Nebraska. They are down in Bellevue tonight. That is where Jim Pillen actually just left the podium right now, and they're continue lining up their speakers. And then we have Bella Caracta, who is live across the street from us at the Cottonwood Hotel. That is where Tony Vargas, once again, challenging Don Bacon in the 2nd Congressional District. That is a race that has received a whole lot of money from both sides of the aisle here in the months leading up to it. You surely have seen the onslaught of campaign ads on all networks as the Democrats really hope to take away that seat from Don Bacon and the Republicans and flip it in their favor. And then we also have Jacqueline Fernandez, who is live with Dan Osborne, the challenger, an independent who is challenging Senator Deb Fischer. That race, a lot closer than it was 3 or 4 months ago. Polls indicating it's now maybe within the margin of error, 2 or 3%. That is one of maybe just 3 seats that Democrats can flip in the Senate, the other being Rick Scott down in Florida and Ted Cruz in Texas. They're holding on to hope they can get at least one of those because the Democrats have 13 seats up for grabs tonight. That could be coin flips. So that is a big storyline we are following here in our studios tonight. We're going to send it back over to our election map here. And that is the Electoral College. And I'm talking with Taylor and Bella behind the scenes to see what we can get lined up. Maybe Brian Mastre can step back in for us. He is currently poring over some of those initiatives. I think he is ready to go. I'm going to kick it over to Brian, who is live in our 6 News studio. Brian, you have the initiative pulled up there. That is 437, the one to legalize medical marijuana. That currently has been in the headlines for the last week as it is being litigated in court. You've been following that case closely. Get our viewers up to date at where that currently stands, the legal process for the legalizing marijuana, as well as the way the citizens of Nebraska are voting tonight.
Right. If you look at the numbers, and this one, Initiative 437, would legalize medical marijuana, 75% to 24% right now. 129,000 votes separate that. And then if you have the one that would essentially regulate medical marijuana, 71% to 28%, both giant differences. So here's what's interesting is that normally you would have a big watch party. There would be celebrations when you see this early stuff. But this has been tempered a bit simply because for the last week and a half, the ballot sponsors have been pulled into court to argue in great detail about signatures and whether somebody made a mistake and whether there's enough to throw them out. The judge made a big decision on Friday where she said, I'm not going to stop the ballots from being counted. Count them, let's see where this stands, and then in the middle of the month, she will make a call as to whether she thinks there was enough evidence that shouldn't have been on the ballot and she could void the results. Either way she votes or she rules, it's going to go to the Nebraska Supreme Court. And what's interesting here, Dave, is that the ballots, all of the election results must be certified by December 2nd. So this trial has briefs are due mid-November. That's when the judge would make a decision. So then you've got 2 weeks in between that and when everything needs to be certified for the appeal to be heard by the Supreme Court. Of course, the families are thrilled. The families with the children who have epilepsy, epileptic seizures, stuff that pharmaceuticals can't control, gives them more side effects. They're ultimately thrilled. This is how they said they thought Nebraskans would vote on it. And I think they believe that's why there have been so many dollars spent to try to fight it at every twist and turn. Let's go back now to the 2 initiatives. These are the ones that seem to be muddied when you watch the commercials because you'd read what they were about and then you'd see a commercial and you'd be like, am I seeing the same thing? Initiative 437, these are the dueling abortion ballot initiatives. This Initiative 434 would prohibit abortion past the first trimester. Nebraska right now has a 12-week abortion ban. If this is approved, that would cement that into the state constitution and also clear the way if lawmakers wanted to make it less. Iowa has a 6-week abortion ban. But this one is right now failing 55 to 44. I anticipate that this gets closer over time. The more you have rural Nebraska voting. But I want you to take a look at this heat map here, Dave. So you see, this is why I say that it's going to get a little closer. To see the greens out here? Those are the folks that are voting yes.
Okay.
And then when you look at who's voting no, you have Douglas County, see their numbers, and then Sarpy County, and then in Lancaster County are big no's. But then if you go out here to North Platte, it's a big difference. But there are so many votes concentrated in this part of the city, the big cities, Omaha, Sarpy County, Lincoln, that perhaps that might not get over the hump. Now it's competing with Initiative 439, which is essentially the right to abortion. It's at 60% right now to 40%, 55,000 vote difference, and it's just flipped, isn't it? Look at the heat map here, and you have those that are for it you've got Douglas County, Sarpy, Cass County, Lancaster. Let's look inside their numbers. Whoops, I didn't do that. In Douglas County, 66 to 33. Sarpy County, 60 to 40, yes, that women should have a right to abortion. Cass County, 54 to 45%. Lancaster, 67 to 32. And this is where you're looking at the big numbers, 36,000 in Lancaster to 17,000. For example, you go to Grand Island, that's a no, they're only looking at 5,900 and 7,200. So the idea on these ballot issues is that you're trying, in many races, you're trying to build up the sheer numbers in the big cities in order to take away what's happening out west. It's why many believe that Dan Osborne, in his race for Senate, the independent welder, he needed to build big leads in this part. And what we could check out what he has to survive all of the votes out here, because in many parts of these counties, sometimes it's 80 to 20 Republicans. So right now, this race has, I think it's, I'm just looking here.
Yep.
It's just a few votes since we last did it. So
Okay.
it hasn't tightened up much. It was 57-43, it's now 55-44. What do we have, a TV going out?
Yeah, a little bit of an issue there with your touchscreen. It's a good point for me to jump in, let you figure
All
that
right.
out. We got 20 minutes.
Hey,
until
we're on the internet just
until the
like you
next
guys.
one. Yeah, no problem. All right, that is Brian Mastre live from our studio. We'll get those issues figured out. I do want to take you live back to where Taylor Johnson
Family,
is right now.
I would not be able
And
to do this, so I thank you all very much for your
as you
love
can
and
see, this
support.
is
So
Governor
thank you.
Pete Ricketts. Let's listen in.
This election night is a culmination of 2 years of hard work by Republican campaigns and grassroots volunteers. Thank you all for what you have done. You've contributed your time, talent, and treasure. You've knocked doors, made phone calls, put up signs, talked to your friends and family about the importance of conservative leadership. And you have fought to give us victory here tonight and help elect conservative Republicans across the state of Nebraska. And I feel with your help, we are on the cusp of taking back our country from the radical left. Now, every year you hear politicians or somebody get up and say, this is the most important election of our lifetime. There's a reason for that. The stakes get higher and higher. And that is certainly the case this year. We are at the most dangerous time in our country's history since World War II. We have a Biden-Harris administration whose reckless spending has contributed to a catastrophic debt. Over $35 trillion. That's $266,000 for every household.
All right, you are listening in live to Senator Pete Ricketts. That is at the Republican Congressional Headquarters tonight down in Bellevue. 6 News reporter Taylor Johnson is on scene there. I want to continue whipping around our coverage, though, at this time and take you over to the Cottonwood Hotel. That is where Tony Vargas' campaign and headquarters is for tonight. Our Bella Caracta is standing by live there right now. All right, Bella, what do you have for us?
Dave, yeah, we're at the Cottonwood where the watch party for Tony Vargas is here, and alongside me is Nebraska State Senator and colleague of Tony Vargas in the Nebraska legislature, John Frederickson. Now, you have helped campaign for Tony. He ran back in 2022. How do you feel like this year is going to be different?
Look, if I'm Senator Vargas right now, I'm feeling really good. You saw these early returns. I've been talking to voters at the doors. They're ready for change. Tony, I had the great privilege of working with him for 2 years in the legislature. He's an incredible, outstanding person who's going to represent our district really well. And if I'm Tony right now, I'm feeling really good about these early numbers.
Yeah, and for there to be one candidate, one campaign here at the Cottonwood, it's a great turnout so far. What's the energy been like as you've walked through the room?
The energy is incredible. People are excited. People are fired up. Tony's really bringing life into this campaign, and I think people are ready for him to lead in our state, and I think people are really looking forward to the leadership he'll bring to Washington as well.
Now, you've been vocal on a number of different social issues in the Nebraska legislature, and there's a lot on the Nebraska ticket, the ballot, that people are also concerned about when it comes to down ballot voting. How do you think that Tony Vargas may benefit or not benefit in this race?
Well, there's a lot of things turning voters out this year, right? We have a number of ballot initiatives, and let's be clear, the polling is crystal clear on where Nebraskans stand on these issues. Nebraskans support access to reproductive health care. Nebraskans support access to medical marijuana. This is across parties and across the state. So I feel like this is going to benefit Tony. He has been a strong supporter of both of these issues, and that's exactly where Nebraskans stand. So he's an accurate representation of the people of our state.
All right, thank you so much. All right, that is State Senator John Frederickson, and here we'll have more as more results come in. Right now, we saw those early numbers. Tony Vargas is in the lead, but as we know, that's early voting, and there's still a long night ahead. Dave, Bella Caracta reporting, back to you.
All right, Bella, thank you very much. Well, Here's live TV for you. I just went over 2-hour live map where it had results just a minute ago. It had Don Bacon versus Tony Vargas numbers. It had Vargas with a 13% lead or so, but like I said, that is live TV, and something certainly happened to our map. So we will try to rectify that situation. Looks like Brian's touchscreen is back. Brian, do you have the Tony Vargas, Don Bacon numbers up on your end? For some reason, they're not working on my end.
Yeah, let me take a look. Yeah, here we go.
There we go. Maybe you can go over those for us.
All right, so we have a 57 to 43% lead, 18,000 behind. Again, as I said, let's go inside these numbers. So you've got Douglas County, where it's let me see what the big lead was. So 56.8 total. Douglas County, pretty similar. Sarpy County. Here you can see where Don Bacon is making up his ground. He's at 55, Vargas at 44. And we don't have anything yet from Saunders County. Remember, this was redistricted in, and there was more of Sarpy County and Douglas County back in 2020. And then essentially those behind it were trying to pull in more Republican votes to try to eat away at this Democratic margins in Douglas County. So as we stand right now, it is 56 to 43. This looks still like just early votes, so maybe in about 12 minutes we'll really be able to see. The next numbers that come in will be the folks who got in line this morning at 8, and then up till about 2 o'clock is what this next batch of numbers will show. Any of those ballots that were dropped off today, and there were roughly maybe, I think, election commissioner said there were about 9,000 of them, those won't be counted till Friday. The problem is that if they came in this morning or late last night, election commission's team has to take each one, verify the signature, make sure that you didn't vote already, make sure that it matches your signature and that, and then they set them aside. So none of that took place today because the election's going on. So those would be counted Friday. That's why if it's a close race here, in the end, by, let's say, 1,000 votes or so, that could be making the ultimate difference. That's why we're here, see if the Dan Osborne, Deb Fischer race is, I think this is pretty much where it was before, with about 280,000 votes in. Osborne still has 54 to 45, but again, if you look at the heat map, everything red means that Deb Fischer is winning that county, and then the dark for an independent is Dan Osborne. So if you look at Douglas County's numbers, 62 to 37, Dan Osborne. Sarpy, 54 to 45. Lancaster County, 64 to 35. But then if you go to some of the bigger counties in western Nebraska, let's check out where Grand Island is. Fisher with a 58-41. North Platte, 60 to 39. Here you have Cherry County, but this just shows you how small, even though it's the biggest geographic county in the state.
Sure.
You have just 3,000 people there that have voted, and I'm not so sure that that number will get a lot greater than that.
Brian, we have Ryan back with us. I got you both up on the screen right now. I'm curious if you have a question for him at this hour.
Yeah, the early votes, Ryan, are those big enough to surpass when rural Nebraska starts coming back to even the score for the Democrats?
Yeah, in that statewide election with Dan Osborne and Deb Fischer.
Yeah.
Typically, it's been a while since a Democrat has carried the state. But if you go back to Ben Nelson and Bob Kerrey, the recipe there is to do really well in Omaha, do really well in Lincoln, and as you just pointed out, Brian, you pointed out County where Grand Island is, Buffalo County where Kearney is, and then North Platte. Dan Osborne would need to pick off a couple of those, and I don't mean keep it close. I mean probably like tie or win it outright, because all the other little counties, Imperial and Cherry, that you pointed out, yeah, they're small counties, but Deb Fischer's going to win them. Looks like she's winning Cherry County. That's her home county, by the way, with 72% of the vote. one red. So that's good for Deb Fischer. I think they look at that and think, okay, we might squeak this out. Boy, big red flag though that she's losing Sarpy County overall. Sarpy County is a suburban and rural county. It's the I think Donald Trump won it by 11. Don Bacon in 2020. Don Bacon won it in 22. His portion of that district or that county by about 20. So that's an embarrassing result for Deb Fischer's campaign. But it looks like they might have enough strength in the rest of the state to pull this out. Would be my guess.
All right, I have all three of our mics hot here, and I'll continue to do that throughout the night so we can all talk back and forth with one another. Brian, I just got some news. It sounds like 435 results are in. Do you have that on the board behind you there?
The 830 ones?
Yes.
Let me refresh.
That was
here.
the school vouchers, I believe.
The school voucher is...
Yeah, reversal.
Yep, it's losing right now. Okay. 38% to 69. 61% are saying no. Let's see if the abortion changed much. This would cement the 12-week abortion ban. It is losing right now, 54 to 45. The right to an abortion is winning 59 to 41. This seems as though they're pretty similar to vote totals that we've had earlier. I don't see a big change in those two. And then both the medical marijuana to legalize it and to regulate it are winning 3 of every 4 votes right now. What do you make of that, Ryan?
I think that those two combating abortion initiatives are really interesting because they say opposite things and they're both winning right now. I think that we talked about with the Osborne.
No, the 434 is actually losing.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's actually, let me jump in here. I'm told there's some issues with the AP right now. Just getting word here in our newsroom. The AP is having some issues with these numbers, so they may not be accurate right now as we speak. So we're going to try to get that sorted out behind the scenes.
I think
go ahead, Brian.
That'll be interesting to see what happens statewide, right? And if you look at the 439, it's doing better in some of those more rural areas outside of Omaha and outside of Lincoln. That's the recipe for success in other pro-abortion initiatives or pro-choice initiatives that have passed in Republican states like Kansas. Kansas, the abortion amendment in Kansas did well in Topeka. It did well in some of the medium-sized cities. That was the key to winning a conservative state like Kansas. It'll be interesting to see if that happens, if that repeats itself. But if I were them, I'd say if I were on the 439 side.
All right, we're just a few minutes away, 6 minutes to be exact, so we get the second drop of results here from Nebraska, which will be today's votes cast before 2 p.m. I'm going to let Ryan and Brian get back and get ready to bring us those results. We'll check back in just a few minutes. In the meantime, I want to go to 6 News' Taylor Johnson for us. She is live down at the Republican delegation down in Bellevue this evening. All right, Taylor, a slew of speakers just got up on stage to talk to all the supporters there. Your thoughts of what you heard and to people that you talked to there behind the scenes this evening.
All right, Dave, so we are here at the Nebraska Conservative Team's watch party. There's at least a couple hundred people in the room tonight, some watching the results. We just heard from several speakers, including Governor Jim Pillen, Senator Pete Ricketts. We also heard from Congressman Adrian Smith. And the energy in here, everyone's pretty confident about where the election will go tonight or where they think the election is going to go tonight, especially when it comes to Congressional District 2. And one thing that Governor Pillen mentioned as well is that all 5 members of Nebraska's delegation all of their seats are up tonight, but he's very hopeful that the conservatives are going to win in every aspect. Now, another thing that the governor mentioned as well, he talks about voting, and he said for those who did not vote this time around in this election here in Nebraska, that they will have a change of heart for the future as they see how critical and important that voting is as it relates to these seats that are up, but also the different ballot measures that we are seeing as well, including medical marijuana and paid sick leave as well, paid family leave, I want to say. So we're just going to continue to watch the room tonight. Congressman Bacon we spoke with earlier, but he's up now watching the results. He says he'll come back down once his race is called, so we'll get some reaction from him as well. I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, that is 6 News' Taylor Johnson reporting for us live in Bellevue this evening. Taylor, thank you very much. I'm Dave Zawilinski, back with us here live in our WOWT 6 newsroom in Midtown Crossing, Omaha. Great to have you with us here on this election night, which promises to be a historic night, one way or another. Will it be Kamala Harris becoming the first ever woman president of our country, or will former President Donald Trump become the first president to serve non-consecutive terms since Grover Cleveland did so back in 1837? That is what is at stake on a national scale tonight. There are so much to get to and break down as we continue to make our way through the evening hours here this evening, including a lot of Nebraska and Iowa congressional races and then ballot initiatives in Nebraska and Iowa as well. With that, let's get right over to our election map and show you what is going on and what has happened so far. Donald Trump has already been declared victorious in the Cornhusker State, even though he is currently behind with nearly 300,000 votes being cast in Nebraska, trailing Kamala Harris by 6%. The Associated Press and NBC News have declared Donald Trump the winner in Nebraska. That obviously no surprise. We'll continue to make our way across this interactive map. Here is something to keep a very close eye on as we make our way here over the next few hours. Senator Deb Fischer, seeking a third term in the United States Senate, currently trails Dan Osborne, an independent, by 8.5 to 9 percentage points right now, with 300,000, nearly 300,000 votes being cast. This is one of the states that Democrats thought that they could flip in their favor in terms of getting a seat added on the blue side of the aisle in the Senate chamber. Right now, it is early. 35% of the estimated vote is in, but it is certainly promising news for Dan Osborne. Jacqueline Fernandez is live at Osborne's headquarters and watch party this evening in La Vista. We heard from her earlier. We'll continue to check in with her throughout the evening as anticipation mounts to a possible victory for Dan Osborne over two-term Senate Chair Deb Fischer from the state of Nebraska. Continuing on in the U.S. Senate, Pete Ricketts has already been declared the victor in this race. This, though, is only going to be his seat for the next 2 years. That is because he was appointed by Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen after Ben Sasse resigned from the Senate. So Pete Ricketts has been in office for about a year and a half, 2 years now. This is for an additional 2 years, and then the seat will come up for election again in 2026 when it normally comes up. Again, Senate seats are every 6 years. So Pete Ricketts has been declared the victor over Preston Love in the state of Nebraska by the Associated Press, even though it is 50-50 right now. But polling data and historical data shows Pete Ricketts will eventually win this race, so it's been called by the Associated Press and NBC News. Let's go to Congressional District 1. This is Carol Blood, who ran for governor a couple of years ago and lost to Jim Pillen. She is now challenging Mike Flood in District 1 for the United States House. Carol Blood has the narrowest of margins of lead, but again, 35% of voting. This promises to move a little bit more in favor of Mike Flood. We'll see if and when it is called, or if this is going to be a too close to call as we make our way toward those 8:45 results. Congressional District 2, this the key one right now across the country, as so much money has been poured in on both sides. Tony Vargas challenged Don Bacon just 2 years ago, lost, I believe, by about 5 percentage points in the 2022 election. Don Bacon has had the seat since 2016, trying to win another close victory. Of course, this is in Congressional District 2. That is known as the Blue Dot because President Joe Biden won Congressional District 2 4 years ago. This right here, very promising news for Tony Vargas, that he has a 13 percentage point lead, nearly 14 percentage points at this early point, but nearly 50% of the vote is in. So we'll see if the cheers across the street at the Cottonwood grow a bit louder as these next round of results come pouring in here any minute, because Tony Vargas does have a nice lead over incumbent Don Bacon. Congressional District 3, this promises to be a runaway. Adrian Smith taking on Daniel Ebers, the Democrat challenger. Adrian Smith with a sizable lead already. It is everything outside of the area there on the right side of your screen. It's the remaining part of the state, which historically always goes deep red, and so no surprise to see Adrian Smith in the lead there. There are a handful of initiatives we are following, including the two divisive initiatives on abortion for 34 and 439. Here is a look at how they are trending right now. 40% of the vote in, and it is close. It was expected to be close on 434 and 449. 439 is currently trending a little bit more in favor of yes, but neither of them has yet to be called. When we go back out and let's look at the electoral map across the country, there are a couple of poll closures coming up here at the top of the hour. At 9 o'clock, 3 more states polls will close. That'll be Montana, Nevada, and Utah. Montana and Utah will go red. Nevada, one of the key battleground states. It's currently outlined in yellow on our map right here out to the west, the furthest west state highlighted in yellow. It joins Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those are the key states that will swing the election this year one way or another. Former President Donald Trump has the sizable lead now of 97 electoral votes over Kamala Harris. But again, it's the race to 270, and there's still 285 of them available. Donald Trump needs to find another 95 electoral votes to get to the 270 threshold. The question is, where will they come from? We'll play with some scenarios here as the evening goes on. I see it looks like the second set of results have come in here at 8:45. Brian Mastre is at our touchscreen pouring over them. We'll get over to him in just a second. Just checking in here with our reporters and seeing what they have. Looks like Bella Caracta is ready. She is at the Vargas campaign. We just showed you a 56-43 advantage over Don Bacon. I want to get out to Bella Caracta, who's joining me live from the Vargas campaign headquarters here this evening. All right, Bella, you saw the latest results just come pouring in, and it is a nice lead for Tony Vargas. The optimism has to be high over at the Cottonwood Hotel this evening.
Dave, as you can see here, we're all looking at our phones, because that's where the results are. The results just came in, and you can hear that it's a solid lead for Tony Vargas here with those second rounds coming in. And standing next to me is his colleague, Nebraska State Senator John Kavanaugh. John, you have your own re-election, which we'll get to, but right now, as you're scrolling through those results with Tony Vargas in the lead, how are you feeling?
I feel great. It's a very strong showing for Senator Vargas. He had a great lead on the first numbers, and he's maintained his lead coming out in the second round.
Okay. And we know now we're getting into some of those early polling people who have started to vote, but we're going to zoom out a little bit here to take a look at the number of people here at the Cottonwood to support his re-election campaign. What do you think people are most excited for this time around?
For Senator Vargas to be our next congressman, people are excited to have a congressman that represents the people of the 2nd District in their opinion about representing women's rights, representing equitable tax code that is for families and working people.
Okay. Now, when you talk about that, also those ballot initiatives, I'm going to touch on that here because there was a loud response when some of those results came in as well. What are those early indications of, the Protect Women and Children along with the Protect Our Right to Abortion, those two competing abortion initiatives? Let's touch on that just a little bit.
Okay. Well, so 439, which is the Protect Our Rights ballot initiative, is out to an early lead, and 434, which is the one that would enshrine in the Constitution the current ban on access to reproductive health care, is behind. And so I look forward to watching the numbers as they come in, but feel very good about the early numbers on that.
Right. All right, and he has his own re-election campaign. You're a Nebraska state senator, along with your sister. Tell me a little bit more about those early numbers that you've seen and how you're feeling.
I feel great about my numbers. I worked really hard in my election, connect with the voters in my district, and right now I think I'm up about 70%, and I hope to maintain that and go back and serve 4 more years in the legislature.
What's your biggest priority for the next 4 more years?
I've got a plan about universal homestead exemption that I plan to bring next year that I know a lot of other people are interested in. It's a bill that didn't get a fair hearing in the special session about property taxes, but it's something a lot of people are in favor of.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Dave, yep, we're here at the Cottonwood as we get more results coming in. We'll be sure to report that, but the energy is high, and there was a lot of cheering when those 8:45 results came in, and Democrat Tony Vargas is still in the lead. Back to you.
Yes, he is. All right, Bella, thank you very much. I'm going to give you the live updated results now that did just come in. The margin between Vargas and Bacon did get much closer. It's down to about 5.5% or so. Actually under 4.5%. It was at 13+%, but that was to be expected. We just got a second drop of ballots here today from across the state of Nebraska. That promised to shrink. We knew this was going to be a close race, but the fact now that there are 73% of the total votes in and counted for across District 2, and Vargas has a 4.5% lead. That is the reason for the big optimism there at his headquarters at the Cottonwood Hotel just across the street from us. I want to welcome in 6 News political analyst Ryan Horn back in with us right now. All right, Ryan, 73% of the vote in, and Tony Vargas has a 4.5 percentage point lead over incumbent Don Bacon. What does that say to you? Are there enough outstanding votes out there for Don Bacon to hold on and retain his seat in Washington?
Boy, I don't think we can say. It's just really hard to say either way. I mean, that's that we expected that initial batch of early votes, the early and mail votes, tend to favor Democrats. So, but that was an unexpectedly wide margin in the early vote count of almost 18,000 votes. You see, he closed the gap by almost 10,000 in this most recent batch. This is the biggest. This is typically the bigger of the batches of the day of voting batches. I think this one's going to be really close. I think Don's races, Don Bacon's races have always been pretty close, but he's always pulled it out by 3 or 4 points. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this one's going to be really close, and it'll be kind of too close to call right now. We'll have to see what that next tally from the afternoon's in-person voting shows when it comes in probably another hour or so.
Ryan, let's zoom out and take a look at the nation. You have had more of an opportunity here than I have to digest what's happening across the nation at this hour. Donald Trump has a 97 vote lead in the Electoral College, but there are no surprises yet in any way, shape, or form. The 7 battleground states still too close to call, so it was expected that Donald Trump would jump out to this lead. What have you heard, what have you seen from your sources about how Donald Trump has this early lead, and how do you compare it to, say, 2020, how Harris is indexing versus what Joe Biden did in some of those key areas that we referenced at the beginning of the night?
Yeah, at this point, sort of early in the count, I'd say we don't need to pay too much attention to the Electoral College count right now. There's a whole bunch of states that are not contested that'll come in, right? So don't pay too much attention to that. That nothing is really surprising yet, with the possible exception that I think Harris seems to be hitting the strong Biden numbers in the suburbs. The suburbs seem to be coming in hard against Donald Trump in the same way that they did in 2020. But at least in Georgia, perhaps some of those smaller communities where he really ran up the score and kept it close in 2020, he might be doing even a little bit better there. So he's doing a little better than expected. I think the Trump folks would feel pretty happy with where they are in Georgia. North Carolina might be a little bit of the other way around. North Carolina fell off the map very quickly in 2020. That one's looking pretty close. And then we'll see what happens in these northern states, right? I think if I had to take away anything, 2 hours into the counting, I'd say Trump maybe looks a little stronger than we suspected in the Southeast. Maybe that's the old Southeast Republican coalition kind of coming back again, but it's very close there. let's see what happens up north.
We haven't talked much about Iowa, if anything at all, so let's bring them into the fray. They made some big news over the weekend, Ryan, with a Des Moines Register poll coming out saying that Kamala Harris has maybe put the Hawkeye state back into play as we take a look at the electoral, or I should say the account vote there right now. Only 23% in, but she does have a 51 to 47 point lead. I think it is important to note here, Ryan, though, that this Des Moines Register poll that comes out every year, it has been wildly accurate over the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, that's why it raised that. That's why a lot of ears went up when that came out, because this isn't just any poll, right?
Right.
This isn't any outlier poll. This is Ann Seltzer, who's one of the best pollsters in the country. She is, without question, the best pollster in Iowa. And the late move, the surprising move of independent voters towards Trump that surprised all the other pollsters in 2020 and 2016, she got that right. She was one of the only pollsters that got that right. So when she came out and said, we're seeing a big movement, particularly with suburban women and older women towards Harris, we've got Harris up in the state, that's why it was not easy to dismiss, because she has such a strong track record in Iowa. It'll be interesting to see if those numbers hold up.
Let's talk about the congressional races. It's probably impossible right now to break down anything on a global scale. There's just too much out there to be had for the evening. But with the results of that poll, maybe Congressional District 3 in Iowa is in play to unseat Republican Zach Nunn. Lennon Bachum is currently in the lead there with nearly 60% of the vote. He's got 54% to Zach Nunn's 45%. How much do you think this is in play?
That's that's a lot of votes. It's not let's see, 47%, 58% of estimated total vote. So that's a big turnout. And again, it's all these different counties can kind of count different batches in different orders. So it's difficult to say, but that's a lot of votes in, over half, and Zach Nunn is down by 24,000 votes. If you made me bet on it right now, I'd have to say that's going to be a tough one for Zach Nunn to turn around with that kind of a margin and almost 60% of the vote reporting. But we will see. There's a lot of conservative, Republican-leaning counties that look like they haven't reported a lot yet, and so that could turn around. But that's a pretty big deficit. It's definitely in play. I'd look over at Iowa 1 too, over in the northeastern part of the state. Where the Republican there this whole election cycle has been underperforming, run a pretty lackluster campaign, and it looks like only 8% reporting. That's going to be one to keep an eye on, right? Because if you look at that map right there, the biggest areas of Democratic votes don't have anything on the board yet. That's Davenport, Cedar Rapids, and the suburban parts of Des Moines, outside of Polk County. Right, those haven't been counted yet, nor has Coralville, Iowa City. So I would expect that one's probably going to come into play. It'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting one to watch.
I want to go back over to the state of Nebraska with you one more time here before I bring Brian back in and give a look at the Senate seat here that's up for grabs between Senator Deb Fischer and Dan Osborne. Your reaction to the current results there, 53% with Dan Osborne in the lead. I think a lot of people were surprised a few months ago when all of a sudden, hey, this was being told that this could be in play. It hasn't been in play in a long time.
Yeah, I think it surprised a lot of folks, and I think it's a function of two things. I think Dan Osborne had a very clear message that made sense to people, made sense to hardworking Nebraskans, makes sense to people that are sick of politics as usual and would like some things to be changed, would like some people to represent them. And he brought that message hard and clean, and he raised enough money to get that on TV. And then Deb Fischer just ran an incredibly uninspired campaign. And
she jumped in late, it felt like. There was nothing for quite some time. I mean, it's very reactive.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Osborne's whole message is Deb Fischer has gone Washington and turned into every other politician that you've ever seen. And Deb Fischer's first ad is her talking in slow motion and looking like every politician and every political ad you've ever seen, right? So she plays right into his message was such an uninspired initial effort. They were behind the ball from the start. I think they're probably going to pull this out based on those trends that I'm seeing on that map right now, because the Osborne campaign is not doing well enough in those mid-sized cities along I-80. He needs to pick off a couple of those where Kearney or Grand Island is, like we talked about with Brian earlier. It's not quite doing that. I think Deb Fischer will take the lead and probably close this thing out, basically on the strength of Republican partisanship in the state, making the case to Republican voters. You might like Dan. He can run a blowtorch. He's great, but he's going to get you Chuck Schumer running the Senate and the Democrats running the Senate.
Yeah.
And that was the case that she made, and that will probably be enough to carry the day once the third congressional district votes come in.
I want to get your thoughts here before we get over to Brian. One final question for you. There were so many issues in 2020 with just getting the ballots counted and then certified. I think Pennsylvania wasn't official until Saturday. I'm not asking you to say and put you on the spot, are we going to get a result tonight? But do you think it's going to take many days, or do you think we'll have a really good idea maybe sometime by like morning or midday tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's going to go better this time.
Yeah,
Dave, I do. I mean, for one thing, a number of states. Notably Pennsylvania's legislature, in an act of just civic irresponsibility, Democrats and Republicans could not agree to just make some very sensible changes to how they count. So Pennsylvania could be, the circus that it was 4 years ago. I hope that's not the case. Other states, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, many other states, their legislatures and governors put new statutes in place. Invested in new technology to make the counting faster. And we're already seeing that, where Georgia is like 80% counted, right? So I think we're going to see a much better situation. The other thing is we don't have nearly as much early and mail absentee ballot mail as we did in 2020, simply because 2020 happened right in the middle of this terrible pandemic, and a lot of states had, very few polling locations open. People didn't want to go out and stand in line and be around other people. So the absentee ballot mail vote was massive, and states and counties were not prepared to deal with it very well.
All right, and with that, Brian Mastre is back with us here. Like I have us all on screen right now. Brian, we haven't talked to you in the last 15 minutes since those new results came in from Nebraska. The race certainly got closer between Don Bacon and Tony Vargas in Congressional District 2. The question is there enough out there for Bacon to make a full comeback tonight?
I think there probably is. Here's why the numbers change. So the lead now is just 8,700 votes here for Tony Vargas. He had a much bigger lead. Let me explain where that happened. So Wahoo finally counted its ballots. So Wahoo in Saunders County. So this was what we were saying, is this is a very red county, and it came in at 64% to 36%. Don Bacon, that's where Don Bacon is making up his ground. Sarpy County, it seems as though he's extending a little bit here. Now he's at 55% to 44%. He's got 1,116 vote lead in Sarpy County. Let's go back to Douglas County. This is where he has a 10,000 lead. Vargas is trying to build up in Douglas County. And I was looking at the numbers from 4 years ago, because that's a better indicator. In 2020, Bacon had 132,000 votes. He has 93 now, so that gives you an idea in Douglas County what's still to be counted. And at that time, it wasn't Vargas running, it was Cara Eastman, and she had the same, 133,000 votes in Douglas County. And so because it was a tie there, Don Bacon was able to collect everything in Sarpy County and ended up winning. Difference this time here is that Saunders County is in the mix, and with that kind of a big separation, I'm not sure Vargas built a big enough lead here. And then what are the voters like that came in at 2 o'clock and then wrapped up at 8 o'clock? Are they more Bacon voters? Go back to the total. Are they more Vargas voters? I'm not sure how that dynamic settles in there. But that is how Don Bacon was able to narrow Vargas's lead.
Brian, take us over to Congressional District 1. It's only 36% reporting. Mike Flood actually was trailing, but it hasn't been called yet, and it is relatively close. Your analysis on that?
Yeah, this is one where Carol Blood ended up having to take some time off. She got sick. She wasn't able to campaign. Some people thought maybe she would drop out. She's run for governor before. She's been a long-time state senator in Bellevue. And I think a lot of folks would say this is a much closer race than some of them thought. Of course, Mike Flood was appointed to this position to then, now he's running for it. Sometimes voters don't love it when somebody gets appointed to a position. They like to see him earn it. So maybe that could be a little difference in that gap. But if you look here, you've got Omaha, where Carol Blood has a 51-48. Lancaster County, huge numbers there, 59-40. But then when you start looking at the other counties, Seward County, it's flipped. It's like 67-30. Butler County, even bigger margins. Colfax, Dodge County, like 3 of every 4 voting. So once you have those, I'm not sure if you look at if that's enough votes out there for Blood to retake the lead. But so far, really good showing, and you never know how some of that turns out. And then if we'll go to the final one, CD3, this is really the odd race. I think you can see it on the map. This is where Bacon Vargas are going, right? Just 2.5 counties right here. This is the Blood Flood race. And then Adrian Smith represents from here all the way out to the Colorado-Wyoming border and then comes back underneath. So he goes from like Fort Calhoun to Chadron State Park for what he represents. And he's going to be going back, it looks like. This doesn't even look even close at this point. But because most of these are rural counties, we won't get those numbers for a while.
All right, I'm going to bring Ryan back in here with the 3 of us right now. And Ryan, we haven't talked, both of you really, we haven't talked much about the balance of power in terms of the United States Senate. There's 34 seats that are up for grabs here this evening. At least more than half are safe. But of the 14 or 15 that might be considered toss-up, I believe at least 12 of them or so, Ryan, are currently being held by Democrats. Your thoughts on where the race is tonight and maybe who's already been declared a victor that I haven't been able to see while we've been doing this live stream, and where it's going in terms of the United States Senate?
Yeah, the only race that's been called that was contested at least for a while, although I don't think this is a surprise. It's been called for the Democrat Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, running a very popular governor of Maryland, but running a very uphill battle because he's in the wrong party for that state. He's a Republican. Maryland is a very democratic state. That race has been called. He lost that. The Republicans don't need that, however, because they have a very favorable map, as you said. A bunch of incumbents, Democratic incumbents, are running in places where Donald Trump did well in states that are trending Republican, specifically Sherrod Brown in Ohio, John Tester in Montana, and then West Virginia. We already had a flip. That was held by Joe Manchin. He retired, and West Virginia, a very Republican state, that flipped to Republican. I think the Democrats are gonna hold Arizona, and then there's a swing race in Nevada, which looks probably like it's going to favor the Democrats, but those polls aren't even closed out there yet. So the map favors Republicans. I think that for the Democrats to have a chance to hold on to control of the Senate, they probably needed Dan Osborne to win this race in Nebraska.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to note that if you go back over the last 2 elections, we're talking 2016 and 2020, the way the state voted, if they voted for a Democrat for president, then down ballot races in the Senate all followed suit. Same thing for Republicans. The only one in those 2 elections that was different was Susan Collins in Maine. So it seems like getting out to the vote and in which way these states end up ultimately going tonight, red or blue, is going to carry the down the ballot races, Ryan.
That could very well. And I think the possible the possible caveats to that are there are close races in Michigan and Wisconsin for Senate, and those races are very close for president. I think one thing that we could see here that will be interesting to watch over the next 3 or 4 hours is, does the African-American woman Kamala Harris do better with white voters in the North than people expected her to? And does Donald Trump do better, a little bit better, with Latinos and African-Americans in the Southeast? That is something that might be happening. And I'm super curious to see that. That would explain why Trump is unexpectedly strong in Georgia and North Carolina. And it would explain some of the things that we're seeing in the suburbs of some of these Midwestern states so far.
All right, 6 News political analyst Ryan Horn. We'll give you a second to catch your breath here, and we'll check back in with you in just a quick second or two. I'll go back over to Brian Mastre here in the meantime, who's live in our studio. He's got the board pulled up for the presidential race across the state of Nebraska, which was called shortly after 8 o'clock tonight, Brian. Donald Trump winning, and even though he's still trailing technically in the vote, but obviously no surprise that Donald Trump had declared victor in Nebraska tonight.
Yeah, you've got some 300,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats in the state. And so once those start to come in from western Nebraska, the difference will be stark. President hasn't won Nebraska since LBJ in the 60s. I was also looking at the presidential race when it comes to CD2. So right now, Harris with a big lead in Douglas County. Sarpy County, Trump leads, but not by as many votes. So Harris has a 25,000 vote lead in Douglas County. So that really doesn't change. It's just 700 votes she's behind in Saunders. In Sarpy, I don't have it split out here, but the way it stands right now, Harris is leading. So if it ended right now, Harris would end up with CD2, that one blue dot, the one electoral vote. Let's take a look at the latest on the Osborne-Fisher race. Dan Osborne at 53%. The independent here who led the Kellogg strike to get better working conditions. Deb Fisher, 47%. That's the one where, as this vote starts to come in, she'll start chipping away. So is 23,000 votes lead at this point enough to withhold whatever this red stranglehold will be as it comes across? Because this gives you an idea. And Doug, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I got to cut you off here. Taylor is standing by down in Bellevue. Senator Ricketts just walked up, so we're going to go over there for a quick second and join Taylor Johnson live with Nebraska Senator Pete Ricketts. Taylor.
All right, Dave, so I'm here with Senator Pete Ricketts. How are you feeling tonight?
I'm doing well tonight, Taylor. Thank you.
There's a lot of optimism in the room that, we've been hearing about from you and others as well, just about where the race is going.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've traveled the state and talked with Nebraskans, they're concerned about inflation, they're concerned about the open border, and they want to see a change in Washington, D.C. and the White House, and we need to retake the Senate for Republicans. So I think we're going to have a very good night tonight.
And one of the things that you talked about was about what Nebraska has to offer the nation. Can you just speak on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at what we do here in Nebraska, we work together to get problems solved. We kept our budgets in line. We were able to deliver tax relief because we did that. We had programs like Iran to be able to help our families on food stamps, get better jobs. We do things right here in Nebraska, and we need to be able to bring that to Washington, D.C., and that's what I've been doing the last 2 years. That's what I'll continue to do as a senator.
And also as well, you talked about this being one of the most important elections of our lifetime. Just as it stands today, I'm sure you were out speaking with voters and other supporters. What was some of the feedback that you were getting from them?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about it, we are at the most dangerous point in our history since World War II. We've got crippling debt that's being fueled by out-of-control spending by the Biden-Harris administration. It's driving inflation, which is squeezing our American families. Nobody likes going to the grocery store anymore. And we've got an open border that makes every state a border state, including Nebraska. And so Nebraskans want to see that change, and that's why we need conservative leadership in Washington.
Awesome. So, as the night continues to go on, and we're still waiting to hear about some of these highly contested races, what do you want to leave with us tonight?
Well, I'm really excited about the opportunity to continue to work with our federal delegation. We've got a great group of folks who are representing Nebraskans, and I look forward to getting them elected tonight.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Ricketts, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
All right, Dave, I'm going to send it back to you.
That's another victory, y'all. And so I have so much more I could say to you. I just want to leave you with this. While we didn't get the votes tonight to win this race, we surely got the attention of little Pete and his friends. They will never disrespect us anymore. They know that we're coming, Democrats. That's why I want to have a talk with you. I want to have a talk with you because I want you to celebrate tonight. Chew on these victories. Digest them. But I want you to wake up in a day or two and start getting busy for the next election. And so we're going to start winning like the volleyball team at UNL. I was going to make some announcements tonight. My time is limited, but I want you to know that I'm going to look for commissioning some issue and disparity studies in all 3 congressional districts to study the disparities and come up with where the problems are in each one of the congressional districts and look for a bipartisan group to come forward with recommendations. And you need to join me, because with that is our power to get things done at the legislature, with the Republicans, and within our own party. So we will be doing that together after you've digested and you get hungry again.
And I'm hungry for this. All right.
Yeah. And so I'm so happy for Tony and his victory. And isn't it something? What we think we see, ladies and gentlemen, we are sitting here together, and you will remember this night, because this night is the night where you sat and watched, where we received and watched the first black female become president of the United States. So I appreciate the time, and I look out with you, and I say, somebody.
All right, you are listening live to Preston Love Jr. concede the race to Senator Pete Ricketts, who was declared the victor early tonight, shortly after the polls were closed here in the state of Nebraska. We'll go ahead and give you a look at that map right now. There it is, Pete Ricketts leading over Preston Love Jr. 53-46. I do want to point out Congressional District 2 before we move over to Bella Caracta, who's live at Tony Vargas' headquarters. Nothing's been called here yet. We just heard Preston Love Jr. said he wanted to congratulate Tony on his victory. Nothing is cement yet. However, it is a good early trend with 75% of the vote, 3/4 of the vote in favor of Tony Vargas, who has about a 4% point lead over Don Bacon right now. With that, I want to go over to Bella Caracta, who is standing by live with a Tony Vargas supporter, Dr. Annalise, I believe. Let's get over to Bella Caracta now live. Bella, go ahead.
Dave, we've spoken to campaign advisors, politicians, but today now we're speaking to a supporter, Dr. Annalise Bosco. Dr. Annalise Bosco, you are from Omaha. You've supported Tony Vargas since 2022, maybe even before that. How are you feeling here tonight?
It's nerve-wracking being here in this big room, and we don't have any final numbers out yet, but there's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, and we're confident. Tony has worked so hard for this.
I mean, as you can hear it in this room, I'll put the mic up to the crowd. We have here Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Donald Trump's results up on the television, and soon we'll probably get another look at some of those numbers. It is going to be likely a tight race between Vargas and Bacon. You said nerve-wracking. We didn't get those results in until late last time. Do you plan to stay the entire time here?
I'm going to stay as late as I can, but I do have a newborn and 2 toddlers at home, so I'll have to get back eventually. But, you know, we're good friends with Tony. We love him, and we're here to support him.
What is it ultimately that brought you out and circled the bubble next to Tony Vargas's name?
You know, probably 4 years ago, we met Tony at a kid's birthday party. And he is just such a down-to-earth, nice guy. He's hardworking, he's smart, he has really, really good values. And as someone that grew up here in Omaha and is a native Nebraskan, I think that's who we really need.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Bosco. Have a good night. All right, Dave, that is just one of many supporters in this room specifically for Tony Vargas. And we'll have more results as the race may be getting tighter as the results continue to pour in. But these people here that I've spoken to plan on staying. Back to you.
All right, Bella, thank you very much. I want to draw your attention now to our electoral map here back in our 6 News newsroom. Here's a current look at the current total. Right now, Donald Trump 195 votes in the Electoral College. Kamala Harris is 88. It should be noted that NBC News at this hour is calling the state of Iowa with 6 electoral votes for former President Donald Trump. The Associated Press has not yet made that call. That is why on the map that we are showing you right now that we control, it is still labeled as available neutral. But NBC News is declaring Donald Trump the victor in the state of Iowa. We'll await an AP confirmation before we officially mark it red on our map. I want to know if Brian Mastre is available for us here. I'm going to see if he can come back in front of our camera. Give him a quick second or two. Looks as if he's tied up at the second here. But this is the electoral map where Donald Trump currently has a sizable lead. Again, that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is those states that are outlined in gold, the 7 key battleground states: Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. But the Iowa call is certainly interesting here this evening, considering that poll that came out just 48 hours ago by the Des Moines Register. It is their poll, which has been incredibly accurate over the years, saying that Kamala Harris had a 3-point lead over Donald Trump in their latest poll. That had been really a sea change because Trump had been leading in every single poll, every other poll, up until that news on Sunday. And now here we are tonight, and NBC News is declaring Donald Trump the victor. If and when the AP goes and declares Iowa for Donald Trump, we'll give him those 6 electoral votes. Ryan Horn, 6 News political analyst, back with us here this evening, live from Washington, D.C. I got to bring Ryan in now to get his reaction to the state of Iowa, in all likelihood going to Donald Trump. Ryan?
Yeah, I think it's not unexpected. It was never a battleground state. Donald Trump won it by 8 points. There was a lot of intrigue over the weekend when the Des Moines Register poll had Kamala with a narrow lead inside the margin of error, and that poll had gotten a lot of trends in favor of Trump in previous years correct. Looks like they didn't get it right this time, perhaps, and that a lot of this map so far tonight starts to look a lot like the 2020 map.
What do you mean by that? Clarify that, the 2020 map.
Well, so far, the swing states we thought were swing states have turned out to be very, very close. We haven't had any major surprises one way or the other. Looks like Donald Trump might be doing a little better in Georgia and maybe North Carolina than we thought, but not by a wide margin. Kamala Harris seems to be hitting the margins that Joe Biden hit, the big Democratic margins in the suburbs and the cities. Those all look in line. Donald Trump is getting the same outsized gains in the small towns and rural areas. That distribution of where the votes are coming from and who's getting the most votes looks very similar so far to 2020. And it could be just a point or two in one state or the other, one way or the other, that's going to determine this thing.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way right now. I'm picking up on bits and pieces. I'm locked into the live stream here, directing it from our and hosting it. and producing it here from our newsroom in Midtown Crossing, Omaha. So it's hard to keep up with what's going on across the nation. But I'm seeing things on Twitter via some text message, some rumblings behind me in the newsroom. It sounds like there's been a swelling of support across the country for Donald Trump. It's been a very good hour for him. Can you confirm that?
Not sure what that's referring to, other than Georgia and North Carolina.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I heard Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia is looking pretty good. I think, relatively speaking, compared to where it was earlier in the night. I'm pulling that number right now. And there's still a lot of votes to be counted, but right now it's 51-48 Donald Trump. And a lot of the big counties in Atlanta have a lot of their votes already in. But again, they are very big counties, and they are going for Kamala 78-22, 73-26. So they're mostly counted, but they're big, and they're going heavily for Kamala. She's down by about 150,000 votes there. So I think it's looking like it's going Republican. Towards Donald Trump. I wouldn't be surprised to see it narrow a little bit. Same story in North Carolina. So it'll be interesting to see as we go north. I look at the early counts in Pennsylvania, and while Donald Trump is leading there, there's a lot of votes in the big Democratic areas that have not been counted yet, in Philly and Pittsburgh. She's winning Erie County, which is a good thing for a Democrat. She's winning Allentown, the county that has trended very Latino in recent years. So the place where she's winning votes look right in Pennsylvania. Like this could really be a toss-up. Kind of same thing in Michigan. So we'll have to. I just think there's a lot more counting to do. I would say that Donald Trump's campaign at 10:30 Eastern feels a lot better than they did at 7 Eastern. That's for sure, but a lot of counting to do.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Anything else jumping off the page to you here before I give you a quick breather, Ryan?
Well, I think that that congressional race in Des Moines, is interesting to me. Where you see, as the votes get counted, that Iowa's flipping over to perform more as it was expected to at the presidential level. But I'm actually look, that one is very, very close. There's lots more votes to be counted there. Democrat is out in front. That one has narrowed in the most recent count, and there's a bunch of Republican, all those sort of counties that are in white. Most of those are small, rural, and they perform well for Republicans. So that one's going to get narrow. I thought early on with that huge lead for the Democrat, is this thing going to get close enough? But I think it might for Zach Nunn to pull it out. But we're going to have to watch it all the way to the end, I think.
All right, that is 6 News political analyst Ryan Horn reporting live from Washington. We are 15 minutes away from the next ballot to dump here in the state of Nebraska. We'll give you a few minutes to collect your thoughts and see what's going on across the country. We'll check back in with you shortly. I want to welcome in 6 News' reporter Taylor Johnson, who is live at the Republican congressional delegation down in Bellevue this evening.
Well, Dave, again, we are here at the Republican Watch Party tonight, and we've spoken to several candidates as they await for the results to come in. Now, one we have not been able to see yet, but did hear from, was Senator Deb Fischer. So we are just waiting for her to come down. She's going to come after the results, but just like everyone else that we've heard from tonight, she is very optimistic about where this race is looking like it will go. As we know, her opponent is Dan Osborne. Earlier today, we heard from Governor Pillen, and he just talked about the importance of getting out to vote. He is just hopeful that people in the future who didn't vote this election will do so next time, mostly because of just how high stakes this election is for our state, but also for our country as well. We also talked with Senator Pete Ricketts, who talked with us just about what Nebraska has to offer as a whole. We also talked about how there are 5 important roles in Nebraska up for election tonight, and everyone here is feeling pretty good about it. It's a couple hundred people in here right now watching the TVs toward the back as we continue to see the results. roll in. But as we've been hearing, some of these races have been really close to call, so we're going to be keeping an eye out and bring a reaction to you from these candidates, including Congressman Bacon. He went back up to his room to go watch the results, but once they come in, we'll hear from him again. I'm going to send it back to you.
Yeah, some tight races for both Bacon and Senator Deb Fischer. Taylor, Donald Trump was declared victorious by NBC News in Iowa. I'm curious what the reaction was like there from his fellow Republican supporters when they saw that news come down. I think we're having some problems with Taylor Johnson's mic. We'll let her go and check back in with her shortly. In the meantime, I want to potentially go over to Jacqueline Fernandez, although she just disappeared on my screen. So we'll wait a minute for her to come back. There she is right now. I'm going to go over to Jacqueline Fernandez, who's live at Dan Osborne headquarters watch party this evening in La Vista. She's been talking to supporters around the room. The crowd certainly has filled in quite a bit more since we last talked to Jacqueline. Let's go out live now to La Vista and get the thoughts from Dan Osborne's watch party here this evening. Jacqueline.
Yeah, hey Dave, a lot going on since last we spoke. If you can see over my left-hand shoulder here, the whole place is filling up very quickly. A lot of people, a lot of supporters for Dan Osborne here tonight. Now earlier I did speak with one super fan, I guess I could say, and he had his four-legged Osborne companion with him as well. So people and dogs, you name it, they're here giving him the support that he so needs. Now in the interim, last time I checked on the polls actually, it did look like that Osborne was in the lead. However, it is a very close race, and this is something initially that supporters and just election viewers and people with the know-how, I guess I should say, were a bit just confused about initially, saying like, why would this race be so close with Deb Fischer, having been in this position. You'll recall at last check, for the last two times, we do have some live music here, so that's what's happening in the background, just making sure Mr. Osborne himself isn't walking on stage behind me. But yeah, the last two times Fischer said that she did win by, I believe, 15 points the first time and 16 points the second time. So the fact that this is a close race is really history in the making in and of itself, Dave. So we're still waiting for Dan to come out here, but as you can see, the area is filling up quickly. We've got some live music out here and still having a lot of fun, but we hope to see the man himself out here soon, and when that happens, of course, we'll let you know. In the meantime, reporting live from La Vista, Jacqueline Fernandez, 6 News.
Jacqueline, thank you very much. A live look at our election map right now, which shows what Jacqueline was just referring to. Dan Osborne with a 52.4% lead over Deb Fischer, 47.6%. So about 5% point lead there. That's just with 50% of the votes currently being totaled up right now. Currently some nervous moments for Republican Deb Fischer tonight, as well as Congressman Don Bacon, as we go look at that map right now, as he currently has Bacon, I should say, is at a 3 percentage point deficit to Tony Vargas. That, though, if you have been with us throughout the evening, may have noticed, has narrowed quite a bit. It was over 5.5%, 6%. Now it's down to just 3%. I want to bring back in 6 News political analyst Ryan Horn to help us digest the numbers that we saw just coming in. 3/4 of the people in Congressional District 2, now their votes have been counted. It continues to narrow. That's clearly a good sign for Representative Don Bacon, Ryan.
It is. I think this is going to be a close one. The latest batch of votes that helped narrow it for Congressman Bacon came out of Sarpy County, where he's winning that Sarpy County area about 60-40. And I think there's quite a few votes yet to be counted coming out of Sarpy County. We don't know how many. It's hard to say how many are left to come out of Douglas. I do think there's quite a bit. But Vargas is winning that only by 5 points. And then Saunders has not reported yet any of their election day votes, as far as I can see. They've reported their early batch votes. They did not report any election day votes yet. And Bacon is winning that county, smaller county, but he's winning at 64-36. I think there's probably a couple thousand net votes coming out of Saunders County yet for Don Bacon tonight, and probably a few thousand net votes coming out of Sarpy County for Don Bacon. I think it's going to be very, very close. This thing's going to continue to narrow, would be my guess.
All right. This is 6 News political analyst Ryan Horn with us here. Let's check in over in Iowa real quick here, Ryan. Brian's getting ready to head to the studio. I know he has some new information to share with us momentarily. We'll let him get set up and his mic back on. Let's talk about Congressional District 3 there in Des Moines. NBC News has declared Trump the victor in Iowa. I think we're still waiting on the Associated Press to do that. Here we're going to take a look at the Congressional District 3 U.S. House map. And Zach Nunn continues to close on in. I assume Donald Trump being declared a victor in the state of Iowa certainly helps Zach Nunn's cause at this hour. It gives him some hope.
Yeah, that's right. He's he's down by about 10,000 votes. There are a lot of these smaller counties have not completed counting yet. They will lean Republican, but notably Polk County, the big one where Des Moines is, has not completed counting yet either. So it is difficult to say from afar right now to predict where that's going to go, but that gap really has closed as some of the more rural and Republican counties come in.
All right, Brian is back with us in studio. Brian, have you stepped to your right there? There you go. All right, we'll bring Brian Mastre back in. I know he's been running around the newsroom, getting on some Zoom calls and whatnot. What have you learned, and what are your thoughts right now as we just crossed 9:30 and we're 10 minutes away from the next set of ballot drops here in the state of Nebraska?
And rural divide, it's not anything new, but a couple of the ballot initiatives are pretty telling. So this is the prohibit abortion past first trimester. Nebraska currently has a 12-week abortion ban. This would cement that into the Constitution. So the totals here is, right now it is failing at 48 to 51%. But the yes votes for it are the green. See all rural. Then you get into Douglas, Sarpy, and Lancaster. They're the ones that are saying no. Now we go to 439, which essentially is the right to abortion. This is winning right now, 55 to 44%, a 50,000 vote difference. You look here, yeses are a little broader. You don't just have the big urban areas like Douglas and Sarpy, but you've got Cass, you've got Otoe County, Johnson County, Gage County, of course Lancaster is a big one. Then here, South Sioux City, Burke County, and even if you go all the way over here in Dawes County, right on the South Dakota border, 54 to 45. And here's the difference that I wanted to show you then. Initiative 437 is the right to legalize medical marijuana. It is crushing it. 3 of every 4 voters are saying, yes, legalize medical marijuana. And look at the board. Look at all the green. It's not just urban and rural. You've got Deb Fisher's home county saying yes. You've got Dawes County, Garden County, Dual County, and it's not even close. Cheyenne County, 57 to 42 when you look at that. A few pockets here in north central Nebraska that are no's, but I just got done talking, and I point this out too, 438 is then you essentially regulate cannabis. It is passing too, just not by the same amount. I just got done on the Zoom call with the families of Nebraskans for medical marijuana, who are, in a way it's a bit bittersweet for them. Certainly they could not be more proud. And they said that these are the results they've been working on for so long because they knew Nebraskans, city folks, rural folks, young, old, supported their mission. And they've been working for 11 years, Dave, on this. And finally they see it come to fruition. Of course, remember, they say the fight isn't over. Right now, the case is being challenged for some of the signatures as to whether these results should be voided.
Right.
That'll be worked out here in the middle of November, and then whatever happens, it'll be appealed to the Supreme Court. But votes have to be these results have to be certified by December 2nd, so time is running short. But ultimately, they believe this is the vote that really matters to everyone, not the court fight.
And it is overwhelming with a 50 percentage point lead for those in favor of it. We'll see if that has any sway in the determination in the long run. Certainly not over tonight for this group, but it's been a long journey and road to this point. They can certainly wait out a few more hours and days to get what they are hopefully wanting to have happen here with the election. Ryan's with us. I got us all 3 on screen for a quick second, and I'll go to Ryan full here. I want to make it clear here, Georgia has not officially been called by any of the major publications, but it certainly seems like we may be getting closer to a call in Georgia for former President Donald Trump. What that means, it's the first of the 7 so-called battleground states that are going to determine this election. What does that mean that we're potentially getting this call before the 10 o'clock hour here in the state of Nebraska, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it means that that Donald Trump did a little better than maybe people expected in the last weekend in the Sun Belt, in the eastern Sun Belt states, Georgia being one of them. Then that's going to turn our eyes north, right? Because if Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania, then there's no path for Kamala Harris. So Donald Trump can win the presidency by winning Georgia and Pennsylvania, barring any other kind of major unexpected outcome. So if he carries North Carolina, Georgia, and then Pennsylvania, that puts him over 270. If Kamala Harris were to come from behind and carry North Carolina, and then one of these blue wall states in the Midwest split, then there's a couple of different paths for each of them to get there, and we'll be counting, and we'll be waiting not past late tonight into tomorrow and the next day, probably looking at what happens in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada.
Yeah, I mean, certainly not.
That's the big takeaway. If Georgia goes to Trump, all he needs is Pennsylvania, really, and North Carolina to clinch. He's leading in North Carolina.
It's certainly the tea leaves read that way right now, and obviously losing a state in one of the 7 battleground states, never good for either candidate. But if Kamala Harris were indeed to lose Georgia here tonight, I mean, really her path to victory this entire time has been the blue wall of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And Georgia being called obviously doesn't affect that in any way. So while it's certainly a hit to her, they still have to feel relatively confident about the blue wall, correct?
Maybe. I mean, I just, there's not enough votes counted yet to be able to say we're going one way or the other up in those northern states. I look at her early performance and these early counts around Philly and its suburbs, and she's kind of hitting where Biden was. But then again, as we've seen here in Nebraska and Iowa, how much difference there can be from an early batch and a later batch, and these numbers can really move around. Michigan looks like maybe it's favoring Trump a little bit, right? So we got a lot more counting to do up north, and those states didn't make some of the good counting reforms that the southern states did, so they could take longer. Pennsylvania in particular.
Interesting to point out. You just mentioned a thing about Michigan there, where maybe Trump is doing better than thought. I mean, of the 3 blue wall states, that was the least. He was the biggest underdog in those 3 states, correct? In Michigan,
I would probably say that was Wisconsin.
Interesting. Okay.
There's some local politics going on in Michigan. The electric vehicle issue is huge up there. In the Biden administration, Joe Biden's zealous push for electric vehicles and turning the entire energy grid, putting vehicles on the energy grid. There's a lot of auto jobs that depend on the combustion engine in Michigan, and that was not very popular. And a lot of those blue collar auto workers were traditionally Democrats. They've been attracted to Trump's message. I think that hurts Kamala up there. We'll just have to see how it comes in.
All right, I got Brian with us back here on the screen, and his mic is open right now. Time just crossed over to 9:43. We're 2 minutes away from the next ballot drop, which will be anyone who voted in person today after 2 p.m. I guess we'll start with Ryan and then go over to Brian. Ryan, what are you looking for here in the next 2 minutes? Because this is the last significant drop that will likely tell the tale of which way many of these key races in the state of Nebraska are going, correct?
Yeah, I'm watching the 2nd congressional district. Does a big Sarpy County drop here get him closer? Does the afternoon batch in Douglas County that tends to be more Republican, tends to be the West Omaha suburbs? Does that get him closer or even put him over the top? That's what I'm watching for.
Yeah, interesting point. With that, I'll go over to Brian, who's at the touchscreen right now, pulling up that 2nd congressional district. Brian, we're now less than 60 seconds away, give or take. Obviously, your thoughts?
Right, we might see the numbers change as we speak. There has been a little movement here. If I remember right, it was Vargas had maybe 700 votes ahead. and now it's been cut to 6,300. Let's see why. There's more that are coming in from Saunders County. And then, a bigger push in Sarpy County as well that has gone Don Bacon's way. So 60-40 in Sarpy, 64-36 in Saunders. That's why Vargas needed to build a big lead in Douglas County. So here, as we get closer to the 9:45, we might actually see these numbers change to see how much of the afternoon vote has made a difference in Douglas County to understand.
It looks like some of it just dropped, Ryan. We went up to 80% estimated in and actually swayed back toward Tony there. Or were you on one of the counties?
I was on Douglas County.
My county. Yeah, my apologies. You were on the county.
Did yours go?
It has not yet, but that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. Ryan, your mic is open as well. After this drop here, how much percentage do we think will be remaining outstanding?
Boy, after this is the third big drop of the night, and typically, Brian, tell me if you agree. Typically, after this one, you're looking at much smaller batches after this one. So we'll. I think Don Bacon wants to be pretty close here. Now, I still think there's a lot of votes to come out of Saunders County, net votes for Don Bacon, because we don't have a lot of much of the election day reporting, it seems, out of Saunders County. So I think there's still a bit more votes there for Congressman Bacon from Saunders, even after this next Douglas County batch.
All right, haven't seen anything. Brian, have you seen the percentages update yet?
I haven't, no.
Yeah,
I was going to check out the Senate race too to see how that is narrowed. So it's a 2-point difference right now, but you see a lot of counties in Deb Fisher's territory that have not counted here. You've got Osborne carrying, looks like 4 counties now: Johnson, Lancaster, Sarpy, and Big and Douglas. This is where he needed to build a big lead. Let's check CD2, and nope, those numbers haven't come through yet in terms of from Douglas County. So
normally for both of you, normally the Republican headquarters in the state of Nebraska, a very joyous place to be on the night of an election. The watch parties get a bit raucous about this time of night. I would guess down in Bellevue right now, there have to be some quite anxious moments in the Fisher and Bacon campaigns, yes?
Yeah, don't you think? But they also know that they've got, Deb Fisher knows that she's got so many more votes to count, and she's only behind by 11,000. And if you look at a lot of these counties, she's winning 8 of every 10 votes. Sounds a little closer, but 8 of every 10 votes. And so you can see how that really builds things up. What's that, Ryan?
The raw data just dropped in Douglas County, and I'm trying to compare 2 different data sets in real time while we talk over the air. It looks like it narrowed, but just a little bit. In Douglas County, Tony Vargas now leads by about 10,000 votes, and earlier in the night he led by about 11,000 votes. So that's
about made up 1,000.
I think it made up net about 1,000 if I'm doing the math on the fly correctly.
Okay.
In my head.
Yeah, that hasn't come in here yet.
6 News is your Decision 2024 headquarters. We've got crews out with the Republican and Democrat.
Yeah, not yet. It hasn't come out, but
On the left side of your screen, that's the Republican headquarters in Bellevue. On the right,
still numbers just a hair behind on our end, yes?
Yeah, this goes through the Secretary of State, I believe, and then through the Associated Press, and then through our system. So it's like sending an email probably to Asia. Takes a little while for it to kind of dip through.
Of all the technology advancements we've had over the years, sometimes on election night, although many prefer it to have paper ballots and go old school way and then take our time, make sure we get it right. Nothing wrong with that either.
Hey, it's better than a few years ago when they flip-flopped a yes and no ballot measure. So the yeses meant
Brian,
no and the noes meant yes.
Those ratios, Brian, are about where those ratios are between the counties. That's about where Don Bacon wants to be.
Is this right here?
He's leading Sarpy by about 20 points. That's a recipe to win the district.
Yep, and it is right at 20, more than 20.
Yeah. He's got Douglas within about 5. So as Sarpy continues to, that's the target that you would want to get to. I think this could end up. I think this could end up being a narrow win for Congressman Bacon. I think he's getting the splits that he wants to get. We'll see.
And like you said, it's about 10,000 vote lead right now. Nope,
Much
here we go. It just came in. So this is with Sarpy. The other numbers coming in. It's now just a 6,300 vote lead for Tony Vargas. So Sarpy came in. So those are those were the late Douglas County votes then.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it was. Yeah, so you do the totals. Yeah, so it's been narrowed. It was 45 minutes ago, almost a 9,000 vote lead for Vargas. Now it's 6,300. And that's most of the Douglas County vote would be in then.
You can keep up with live election results on our website,
Yep. That's gonna be close, but it's gonna keep.
So you think this is within the margin for Bacon to make up his ground in Saunders and part of Sarpy?
I do. I think there's a couple thousand votes net to come yet out of Saunders, and Sarpy hasn't counted very fast either. I mean, Sarpy's only 30% reporting. They've only counted 16,000 votes out of Sarpy. I would expect that they got more to count.
Osborne has a 12,000 vote lead right now.
Yeah, she'll overtake that. It won't end up being terribly close, I don't think.
A lot of counties to come, and I'm guessing the big crunch of Lancaster, Douglas, and Sarpy are probably in. Well, maybe not Sarpy, but more came in. It's now down to 5,600. So those are some Douglas County votes that came in.
Yeah.
So now it's 5,600 vote lead for Tony Vargas.
Boy, that's going to be close. That's going to be close.
Will that be enough that you'll have to count the, wait until Friday to count the provisionals and the early votes that were dropped off today?
I mean, maybe so.
Maybe.
I mean, he's winning Saunders 63-36, but it's just not a very big county. But maybe there's 2,000 or 3,000 net votes for him. Then it's going to come down to Sarpy. How many more ballots does Sarpy have to count?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because the only idea I have is to compare it with 2 years ago, but you can't really compare it with 2 years ago because it wasn't a presidential election year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because 4 years ago it was off at Air Force Base mostly. Was in there.
Mm-hmm.
We got about 7.5 minutes to go until the top of the hour. I know Brian and I have to get ready for some TV, so we're going to wrap up the live stream here shortly. Before we do, obviously there's so much remaining out there tonight and probably into tomorrow at this point. Maybe none bigger than the Congressional District 2 here in Nebraska that you two were just breaking down. Ryan, I want to get your final thoughts for our viewers right now as we get set to leave them for our 10 p.m. newscast. And we may come back on after the fact to bring you some victory concession speeches as well. But Ryan, your final thoughts for us at this time.
Neck and neck race all the way down in the 2nd Congressional District. Really interesting things to watch on the ballot initiative side, particularly with the abortion ballot initiatives. And it's going to be another few hours at least of counting to see who's going to Congress from Nebraska too.
If I told you earlier today that this is where we would be right now, would you be surprised?
No, I would not. I would not. The one thing that's a little bit surprising is that Donald Trump is losing the congressional district by 10 points, almost 11. But Don Bacon is hanging in there, and I think might pull it out. That's a pretty big gap. That's pretty good job by Congressman Bacon if he ends up pulling this thing out.
Interesting point indeed. That is Ryan Horn, 6 News political analyst, reporting for us live tonight from Washington, D.C. Ryan, as always, we really appreciate your contribution here on election night and breaking everything down for us and our viewers. Always great insight.
Happy to be here.
All right, Ryan, thank you very much.
I'm not doing anything on that.
We'll cut you loose. And I'm Dave Zawilinski here in our 6 News newsroom at 36th and Farm in Midtown Crossing, Omaha. We've been with you for exactly the last 2 hours, walking you through live results, primarily focused on our local Nebraska and Iowa races, but also giving you a glimpse into what's going on across the nation here tonight. Still so much to sort through, and that is exactly what we all figured it would be. The polls coming into today, November 5th, were a neck and neck, too close to call, and that is exactly where we leave you. There were 7 battleground states that were likely going to determine the presidential race. 7 of them still withstanding here tonight, although Georgia certainly looks like it is leaning toward Donald Trump at this hour. That is not enough for him to declare a victory, however. He needs at least 1 from the blue wall, and there are still many paths for Kamala Harris if she wants to become the 47th president of the United States. So we're going to sign off our streaming here for now. That is because we are getting ready for 6 News Live at 10, anchored by 6 News veteran news anchor John Nicely and Aaron Sullivan. We will also, Brian Mastre and myself, be joining the program for you there. And then sometime throughout the night, either on TV or here on streaming, we will bring you the victory and concession speeches of the local races from the Democratic and Republican congregation. So we're going to sign off from now. I'm Dave Zawilinski for our entire news team here at 6 News. We appreciate you being with us here on this historic night. And who knows, we might see you in about an hour from now. Have a great evening.